I'm going to begin this morning with a story. There's a guy, his name was Bill, and he is a hard worker. He'd come home every day from work, and he was dirty, and he was sweaty, and he was tired, and every day he'd come home and he'd go in the back door and he'd sit down on the couch and grab a beer from the fridge, and he'd plop himself down and wait till his wife brought him supper. And he was driving home from work one day, and he listened to the radio. He was listening to this Christian psychologist on the radio, and he was talking to him about the way a marriage, loving marriage, was supposed to work, and that marriage is about love and sacrifice. And he was convicted that he had to do something. He said, my wife has done so much for me and sacrificed so much for me, and I need to do more for her. And so he decided the next day he was going to come home, and he showered and he shaved, and before he left, and he stopped on the way and he got some flowers for her. He went to the florist and he got some flowers, and he went to the front door and he rang the doorbell, and she opened the door and he said, "Here, honey, these are for you. I love you." And she looked at him and she had tears in her eyes, and she said, I'm at loss. I had to bring little Billy to the hospital today, and he broke his leg, and the washing machine broke, and there's water all over the floor, and I just had a horrible day, and here you are, now you come home drunk. But Bill had the right idea. He at least was moving in the right direction. Sometimes you just can't win. True love manifests itself in sacrifice. And today's Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody. Did anybody get cards for Valentine's Day? Any wives, husbands? Yes, a few people got cards. Got past.
I got a heart with spray candy in it.
You got a heart with spray candy in it. So we got a few. So there's some little Valentine's things. I can't resist talking about Valentine's Day when it falls on a Sunday. How much do we know about Valentine's Day? How much do we know about why do we even celebrate it? Why is it out there? What are the religious roots of it? Are there religious roots of it? There's a little short video for a crash course on Valentine's Day.
There's no doubt about it. Valentine's Day is one of America's most popular holidays. More than 62% of Americans celebrate by sending greeting cards and flowers, giving candy or other gifts, enjoying romantic dinners, or all three. But the history behind Valentine's Day turns out to be somewhat surprising. For example, the roots of Valentine's Day go all the way back to a raucous ancient Roman fertility festival held in mid-February called Lupercalia. Later, the Christian Church chose mid-February for St. Valentine's Day in order to Christianize the celebration. But who was St. Valentine? Not much is known about the holiday's namesake. First of all, there was more than just one Christian cleric named Valentine. One of them was sentenced to death for performing marriage ceremonies in secret after Emperor Claudius II banned marriage for young Roman men, thinking single men made better soldiers. Pope Gelasius declared February 14 as a date for honoring the soft-hearted Valentine at the end of the 5th century. It wasn't until the 1300s, though, that the holiday became definitively associated with love and romance. Back then, people believed that February 14th was also the beginning of birds' mating season. The first written Valentine greetings appeared in the 15th century, and by the 17th century, people in Great Britain had begun a tradition of exchanging Valentine's Day cards or letters. Valentine's Day soon caught on in the US as well. The first mass-produced holiday cards emerged in the 1840s, and Valentine's Day soon exploded into a major consumer holiday. Today, an estimated 1 billion Valentine cards are sent each year, more than on any other holiday except for Christmas. More than 35 million heart-shaped boxes of chocolate are sold, and more than 220 million roses are produced for the holiday in a typical year. Altogether, Americans spend almost $20 billion on Valentine's Day, or an average of some $130 per person per year. While the most popular gifts were candy and flowers, nearly 20% of Americans splurge on jewelry, shelling out as much as $4 billion annually. And those who prefer the ultimate romantic gesture are definitely not alone. A recent survey revealed that as many as 6 million couples are likely to get engaged on February 14th. continuing a long, romantic history that we bet you didn't know.
So there's a lot of love, a lot of money being spent on Valentine's Day and this weekend. And legend also says specifically about the religious background of that Saint Valentine, when he was imprisoned for marrying those couples against the emperor's wishes, that he would send messages to his friends saying, "Remember your Valentine, and I love you." So a little bit of just, where does that stuff kind of come from? The Bible paints a different picture of love. In English, we say things like, "I love my wife," or "I love my husband," "I love my brother," "I love my sister," "I love my friends," "I love my fellow man." And we inherently know the difference. When we say those phrases, we know kind of what we mean, that there's a difference in those. But we still say, we love, we love, we love. And the Greek language, which is what the New Testament was written in, does things a little bit differently. They have actually made distinctions. They had several words for love, different words that had distinctions between what they were talking about. And so we'll look at a few of those. The first one is storge. Storge is what we call kinship love. This is the love for family. This is brothers and sisters. Mainly it's parents and children to parents. It's literally the natural affection. The only time really it's used in the New Testament is in the two instances where it says in the negative, without natural affection. So it'd be astorgos. And it would be, there's no natural affection, or maybe translated unloving towards each other. So that's kinship, storge. And then you've got philos. Philos is what we call friendship love. And this is a love that's based on common bonds and benefits for one another, that you have you share some kind of a common element together. Our English word that we say like, that we like you, or we enjoy spending time with you, or we enjoy your company, we kind of give this idea of philos. We like hanging out together. So that's philos. And then, of course, there's eros. And eros is the physical love. It is the lustful love. The base motive of this is primarily that I get gratification through my five senses, this type of love. Now, this Greek word is never used in the New Testament. It's a Greek word, and this is what in their culture, what they would have known the distinction of, but never used in the New Testament. And then, of course, there's agape. And I think that this is one we're probably most familiar with. And this we'll call godly love. And this is a sacrificial love. This is a love that has giving without expecting anything in return. Paul, Peter, and John all use this word agape to talk about the love between believers and to talk about the love that God has for us. That's what they use, agape. And in fact, this is what the word is where John quotes Jesus in his gospel when Jesus is bending down and washing his disciples' feet and serving his own students. He says this to them. He says, "Now I'm giving you a new commandment. Love each other," agape each other. "Just as I have agape you." You should agape each other. Your agape for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. Jesus says, "I'm giving you a new commandment." Now, this is really not new. You can look back in Leviticus 19:18. You see, love one another in these Old Testament scriptures talking about love each other. But new can also mean fresh. A fresh experience, a fresh interpretation. And how I'm going to tell you this includes serving one another in a community of believers in which the community has been created to build these relationships based on serving one another. And it says, how will they be known? They will be known by how they love. They will be known by how they love and serve one another. And see, these early believers, they didn't just go to church. We say that. We say, well, I'm going to church. I wish we could just change our lingo around, be more focused on the terminology we use to change our mindset. We don't go. We are part of the church. We are the church. And that I'm going to go be with the church. Not I'm going to go to church. I'm going to go be with the church. And early historians, they commented on these early communities of Christians, and they said these guys love each other so much they called their communion times love feasts or agape feasts. And so what do the world say about what we do up here? They say, are they loving each other, or that's just a ritual they do every Sunday? What's the perspective? Because they knew, the world knew that they loved one another by serving one another. And John will expand on this when he writes a letter. In 1 John, he will write a letter to believers, and he'll talk a lot about love. We're going to look at 1 John chapter 3, verses 10 through 24, and he focuses on agape love. He says, "So now we can tell who are children of God and who are children of the devil. Anyone who does not live righteously and does not love other believers does not belong to God." I'll say, well, let's stop. We're going to stop right there for a minute. This is pretty intense. I mean, you really, he says, what? This is some serious stuff. He says, children of the devil does not belong to God. No love for each other equals not belonging to God. I'm thinking that we need to pay pretty close attention to this. That this is pretty serious stuff here that he's talking about. I mean, this is sort of soul at stake kind of stuff. Because he's saying, if you don't love other believers, you don't belong to God. And so then he'll continue, he'll expand on this idea here as he talks about what does this look like in the life of believers, in the life of a community to love each other. He'll say, if we love our brothers and sisters, we who are believers, it proves that we have passed from death to life, gone from death to life. But a person who has no love is still dead. Anyone who hates another brother or sister is really a murderer at heart. And you know that murderers don't have eternal life within them. We know what real love is because Jesus gave up his life for us. So we also ought to give up our lives for our brothers and sisters. And it's not here that John's trying to apply pressure to make people feel guilty about failing to love people in a complete manner. He's expressing that when the gospel has made it into our lives and the cross has made it into us, that this outpouring of agape love should be the expression of that. It should be the fruit of the Spirit that Paul talks about, that love is one of those that's produced in our lives. This agape love is produced. We carry an imprint of the cross with us. Carry it in our bodies with us as we are children of him, as we are children of God. And during his reign of Prussia, King Frederick III had a lot of wars that he was dealing with. And he was trying to rebuild his economy, trying to get things going again. And so he decided to ask the women of Prussia to bring their gold jewelry, or their jewelry to him, and melt it all down to make gold. And he would give them a trinket in an ornament back for their sacrifice. And so he made iron crosses, and he would give them to the women, and the iron cross sent them back, said, "I gave gold for iron, 1813. And the women really appreciated these crosses. In fact, they cherished them so much that at that time, wearing jewelry became unfashionable. Because they had this cross, and they had sacrificed for their king. They had made a sacrifice for their king, and got this cross that said, "I gave for the king," and it established an order that became known as the Iron Cross, the Order of the Iron Cross. But we come to a king, and we exchange luxury and prestige for a symbol of sacrifice, for a cross. And it's not just that we take on, but it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle of sacrifice, of practical action, of action that takes place. This is what agape love is. It's active. It's an active love. It's a new kind of love that Jesus shows, getting down on his knees and serving his own disciples. It's a higher standard of love that he's interpreting that's been around for a long time, but it's a fresh look on it. It's not the love of a mighty military king. It's the love of a humble carpenter willing to serve. And so John continues. He says in the next verse, says, if someone has enough money to live well and sees a brother or sister in need, but shows no compassion, how can God's love be in that person? Dear children, and look at this. Let's not merely say that we love each other. Let us show the truth by our actions. Our actions will show that we belong to the truth. So we will be confident when we stand before God. People in need show by actions. That's those phrases in those verses, in need and in actions. See, agape love is not an emotional, warm feelings kind of love. It's an action verb. In fact, every single instance in these verses here, and in most of this section in John's chapter, agape is an active verb in the Greek. It's agapeo in the Greek. It's a verb. It's a verb tense. It's an action verb tense. When I was in chaplaincy intern, I met a lot of families in the hospital who were in various stages of grief and anxiety about whatever they were going through. And some of you have known friends and family in hospital situations, and you may have known somebody where you went in and the person was dying or had just died, and all anybody could think to say about the person is, dang, their heart was really in the right place. Their heart was in the right place. And it could be a guy who is 50 years old, and he's dying because of some alcohol-related incident, and he's had got 6 kids and 2 ex-wives and barely can support them because he's barely able to keep a job or out of work, but his heart was in the right place. That's what they'll say. And that's comforting us. It's simple for us because maybe he did want things to be different. Maybe he felt that he loved them and he wanted things to be different. And I'm not a person to judge somebody's heart. None of us can. It's God's realm to judge a person's heart. And yet, we can have loving feelings and loving emotions. Does it really mean that true love exists? See, it's easy for us to talk in simplistic terms about, well, our heart's in the right place. But it's a lot harder to say, I really feel for you, I really love you, but fill in the blank. See, that but gets in the way of active agape love a lot of times. And that's the difference. As agape love is active love. It takes action. It steps up. And sometimes it shows up in the headlines like a guy who runs into a burning building to save somebody that he doesn't know. Or the person that gives a stranger a kidney that they've never met, maybe never will meet. But we won't make headlines like that. Most of the people will not make headlines in that way most of our lives. Our actions, our active love will be routine, it will be boring, it will be uneventful, and that's okay. That's okay. We actively love where we're planted and where God wants to grow His kingdom, and in ways that we can show each other that we love each other. Agape love compels us to respond to one another's needs, our joys, our concerns, our burdens. This is what true love and how true love manifests itself. The problem is we can't know how to act for one another if we don't know one another. And I know you've heard this before. You heard it last week, and you're going to keep hearing it again and again. If we're not willing to be vulnerable to one another, to really know one another, to be comfortable with one another, to share each other's needs, then are we really the body? Remind me again of how the world will know that we are Christ's disciples. I just read it. By the way we love one another. He said it, Jesus said it, not me. The world will know you by the way you love one another. People want to be part of a community where love is tangible, where they can feel God's presence and know that He's there based on the actions and the love that's being shown within that community through action. And so John, he ends his letter, ends this section of his letter with this kind of a summary of where agape should take us and experience this. He says, this is His commandment. This is God's commandment. We must believe in the name of His Son, Jesus Christ. Believe in Jesus. Believe in His authority. Believe that He's God's Son and love one another. And love one another. Just as He commanded us, those who obey God's commandments remain in fellowship with Him. There's that word again, fellowship. We talked about that last week. And He with them. And we know He lives in us because the Spirit He gave us lives in us. That word fellowship again. Now your translation may say, abide in Him or remain in Him. The idea is that you are together with God. That you are together with Him. And we talked a lot about that last week. Fellowship means together. You got to be together. You got to be together and to know each other. I said last week that early believers lived for Jesus, and they lived with one another, and they lived by the Spirit. When we are possessed by the Spirit of God, and make no mistake, you're possessed by the Spirit of God or possessed by something else. You're possessed by the Spirit of God. That loving one another in action and through fellowship is what we should be experiencing. We must know each other, and we must be together in order to know each other. Because Christianity is not individual, it's a community-based faith. We must know one another, we must be together, we must be one body, working together, rejoicing together, sharing together, crying together, supplying each other's needs together. And it's not easy at times. You can have conflicts with each other at times. You disagree at times. The hand doesn't always like what the foot wants to do. The ear doesn't always want to hear what the eye sees. That's okay, but if you really know and you're really spending time together, then you work those things out in community. Now, I'm going to keep saying this. Every Sunday I'm going to keep saying this. This will sound over again familiar. And I'm not going to purposely jam it in, but it's in the Bible. Over and over again, it's in the Bible. I don't have to look very far to keep this point coming up. Until we get it. Until we really get the idea of this. Now you say, well, how am I going to know when you really get it? Well, one indication is I have a sign-up sheet in the back for us getting together. And if you weren't here, you know, I said last week that I wanted us to get together on Sunday evenings at 5 o'clock at different houses and go around to each other's houses and spend time getting to know one another and being in each other's presence and really developing relationships with one another. One indication is this sheet's filled up with names and the places we go are busting at the seams. That would be one indication that we get it. There's one idea. You know, we're not going to go into a burning house. Okay? We're not going to go into, run into saving people sometimes, but this is a tangible way that we can love each other and a tangible way that we can show the world that we do love one another. See, every day we betray Christ in some way. With our words, with our actions, and with our lack of action. We betray what He stood for. But He's ready. He's ready to embrace us. He's ready to embrace us and to call us to love like He loves. He says to love just as He loved. To really serve each other and to know one another, to really be His body. That begins with saying, I'm going to be committed to Him. I believe in Him and I'm going down into the water and I'm giving up my old life, coming in, going to make a new life where He is at the center of my life, and then loving one another who's the rest of His body. Making a commitment to Him and making a commitment to the person sitting next to you. Let's do that. Let's make a commitment. Most of us in here make commitments to Him. So make a commitment to the one sitting next to you now. Let's pray. Father, I am so in awe of You. I'm so in awe of the love that You've shown us, a love that we just don't deserve, and that every day in some way we seem to just throw back at You. And I'm grateful for that love. And I pray, Lord, that Your Spirit will envelop us. I pray, Lord, that You will embolden us to really love the way You loved us. I pray, Lord, that You will see through Your people here, that the world will see through Your people here how to love, and they will see Your love through us. In Jesus' name, amen.